Hello, and welcome to May 24th, 2022. My name is Kurt, and this is my daily good life adventure. Adventure? Creed. Meditation. Well, I guess it feels kind of like an adventure sometimes. It's the result of a lifetime of adventure, in fact. You know what it really is. This effort is not only a recitation and remembrance of my values, but it's also a moment of the season of philosophy, which is a term that I use to describe the result of trying to live an interesting life, and then what comes of that later when thoughts and memories conspire to give us new ideas. So yeah, I guess it is a good life adventure as well. I do this every morning, not long after waking up, to remember my objectives and principles, to see how I did applying those to the challenges and opportunities of the last 24 hours, and then to prepare for the coming day. First, yesterday and last night. I slept really well last night. I think I was up once or twice. I barely remember it, or maybe it's just a memory of routine. A memory of having gotten up in the past. I remember the alarm went off and I woke delighted. I woke refreshed. I woke enthused into the new day. And I continue to feel that way right now. I woke enthused. I awoke enthused. And I'm not. Oh no! I can probably figure this out. Oh, did I get my circle? I sure did. It met all my criteria yesterday. I think I know why I woke enthused. Yesterday was a good day. I worked well. I exercised well. I did not only my obligatory walking, but I did my yoga as well. I worked really well, if I didn't say that already. I mean, it was tough because I only had 2 meetings, so it's tough to sometimes. I mean, I never do. I'm not the kind of person that can let time pass when I'm being paid when I'm on the clock in an unproductive manner. I did good work. The question at hand was, would I do it quality work? Would I mean really good work, not just, punch in the press, but diligence, energy, effort. I did. Then I had a good evening with the family. Chris was here another evening, so we had dinner last night. Yumiko made a really great dinner last night. And then I slept really well, and I got to bed on time. Yeah, it was good. In terms of challenges, not really. I wasn't too challenged yesterday. Maybe today. Let's do the good life meditation. 7 objectives and 30 principles. Can you tell that I'm hiding something? I am. I'm not going to tell you what it is, just because it's a little embarrassing. I did have one challenge yesterday that's on my mind. I'm going to keep it to myself, though. It wasn't bad or evil or dirty. Just a little personal. Kind of like the illness that I'm going through right now. I'll tell you that I got a little bit of an illness. The doctor doesn't think it's going to be too bad. Oh, speaking of which, I need to make that appointment. I need an ultrasound this week. But for the moment, I'll keep that to myself. And I'll keep this other thing to myself. The challenge that I hit yesterday, I kind of saw it in the moment. And I chose it. I chose to not rise to the occasion consciously. How would I do that better in the future? I would be more mature. I would use the principle of maturity, wisdom, and fortitude to remember the experiences of the past, and to use fortitude to keep myself to the track. I have my rules for a reason. That's what I'll do. I'll be more fortuitous. Is that a word? Fortuitous? That means lucky, right? I will exercise more fortitude. Okay, let's do the good life. Yeah, okay, I fessed up kind of. Didn't tell you what, but I told you that something happened. My 7 objectives are as follows. Number 1 is to be always ready to die. To have my life affairs, my relationships with others, and my personal mission, if not complete, at least tidy, sharp, tight, ready to be brought to an end. Because when my death comes, that will be I can't tidy my affairs anymore, and I can't attend to my relationships anymore, and I can't pursue my goals anymore. So, if not done, at least tidy. Number 2 is to, make good and effective use of my time. To not waste my time. Was yesterday a wasted day? Not at all. Even the thing that I stumbled on was effective because, in hindsight, because it's going to help me to elicit more fortitude in that direction, because I'll be challenged with that again. It was a good use of time yesterday. It was an effective use of time. For that's the main measure of getting the circle today for yesterday. Number 3 is the development and maintenance of good and sound life principles. That's these 7 objectives and 30 principles. Maintaining them, adding to them, subtracting from them, doing what I can to remember them and apply them. Next is the cultivation of good emotional reactions, just to react well as life unfolds, to not be bowled over by my emotions or carried along in the moment, but to remain. I want to almost say a neutral observer, an observer and a participant, but keeping my observer's reserved mind. Maybe there's some room for neutrality there as well. Although I certainly won't be neutral as to the things that where I have to make a decision. I have to take a side there. But if I begin with neutrality, then that's a good thing. Begin with neutrality and guard that neutrality as the plaintiff and defendant make their case, and then I'm called upon to make a judgment in my own life. I like that. Guarded neutrality while I listen to the evidence. And then, if I need to, I can. Well, my emotions will sink in, but I'll try to manage them so that they don't have too much weight or control. The next principle is the good use of my time. I'm just doing good things throughout the day. And then to recognize my true limits and my true opportunities, so that I'm making this good use of time towards ends and endeavors that are worthwhile, that pursue virtue, that facilitate the good life. And then I recognize where my limits are, where my applying effort and worry, applying effort and consideration undue consideration, beyond the consideration necessary to see something as outside my scope of control. That is a waste of time. Next is to do just one thing at a time, and to do that thing slowly and deliberately. And it's basically not to multitask. Okay, those are my 7 objectives. Now for the 30 principles. Number 1 is the principle of war, to always be fighting against what I think is true. Because I don't want to hold on to things if they're not true. I also want to fight against the things that others propose are true, that are indicated, that are important, or that I anticipate are important. I don't mind accepting mundane claims, like that you had an omelet for breakfast. But that you had an omelet for breakfast under the oversight of a all-powerful, invisible creature, a being of some sort. We'll need to talk about that. That's it. Or particularly if you want me to believe that as well. 2 is the principle of reason and the sub-principles of honesty, objectivity, and doubt, which are the frame of mind that I hold as I move forward in life. Trying to be trying to be a reasonable human being. Next is a principle called the Homunculus. It's the idea that free will is an illusion. No. I'm getting things mixed up. Homunculus suggests that consciousness is all we've got. That nothing that is this thinking agent inside my head will survive my death. I don't have a soul. I'm not even clear about what a soul is. I don't think it's even very well defined. And there's certainly there's no good evidence to think that the concept of a soul has any bearing on reality. So if that's the case, then once this corporal house I live in, inhabit, well, that's a bad image too, because a lived-in house can be left and life can go on elsewhere. It's more like a sustaining infrastructure. This infrastructure that sustains this little light of being is a trap. Well, it's not even a trap, right? I mean, it's not like I came along from somewhere else, found myself stuck here. I came into existence. My light came on. Your light came on as a result of this biological apparatus, consequence of this composition that we are. And when this composition winks out, when it stops functioning, so too will be the end of us. An eternity of nothing, beyond, not night, not quiet, nothing. But we're already familiar with that nothing, because it's the same nothing that we knew or didn't know that we didn't know before we life, right? That 14.5 billion years of non-existence. Although the non-existence to come is forever, seemingly. It's not likely these constituent parts are ever going to come together again. Unless I've got it all wrong about that bodily resurrection thing, then won't I be surprised? Next comes the Anchorhold, the proposition that or it's not even a proposition, it's an observation that the consciousness seems to be trapped inside our bodies. I kind of already went on over this. And then the home of good and evil, the idea that right and wrong, good and evil are opinions that we keep in our head, that they're subjective at their root, but they kind of resemble objective opinions when we can apply them to the world and show that they are demonstrably true. And this is reinforced even further when you and I agree that something that is true seems to be true. But at its root, it's still an subjective because the universe doesn't give a damn about any of that stuff. It's just, you know, chemical biases inside our brains, our nervous system. It's tepid water over cold. It's an interesting avenue of thought to go down. Maybe I'll trespass there later. Next comes the principle of purpose. And the three principles in my life are to be a good husband and father. I call that the sub-principle of biology. To be a virtuous human being, and to pursue my life's work, which is the sharing of my book, Going Alone, available on Amazon and at goingalone.org. This is the story where I talk about my great life adventure and the resulting of that, namely the coming back, which is the curious punchline of Going Alone. It's not about going alone. It's all about the coming back. And the Good Life Creed, this thing I'm reciting right now, is explained in the book. Next comes the atomic principle. Everything is made of bits and pieces, including us. Then the principle of nature. Everything has some particular nature, and it's good to recognize what that is. I could talk about a nature that I saw yesterday at work, but I won't. But it was interesting to observe and to remember. In fact, excuse me, that might be part of my reason for my sense of ease this morning. It was kind of a breakthrough observation that I had yesterday about the nature of not just where I work, but at work in general, humans at work. That's going to be helpful if I can keep it in my memory. Part of the remembering of what works and what doesn't. Okay, next is the pirate ride. The idea that free will is an all too convincing, seemingly convincing illusion that we are in control. We do get to make choices. The funny thing is, the choices that we make are the only choices that we could have made in a particular moment. Because at that point, the universe is the great inertia of all the forces around us and all of our experience and all of the past. And they press and push us towards certain decisions in an environment where we can make other decisions. Seemingly, there's lots of paths before us. It's not a matter of just us in a vacuum selecting one or the other. It's a matter of the whole weight of the universe kind of pressing us this way. And the result is that the choices that we do make appear to be our own, but really that's the only one we could have made. If the universe could replay itself over and over again, exactly the same, we would always make that same choice. I think that's clear, at least as a thought experiment, right? If no other variables changed, we would always make that decision. And it's not because it was predetermined. It's not because apparently I don't know if any deity is impacting and guiding things. It's just simply because again, to use the word inertia, all the inertia of the universe was pressing in that direction. Just like the clouds forming on Jupiter, the pattern that we see isn't a result of any decision making. It's a result of the weather upon the face of Jupiter and below the face. That great storm in the middle, that great eye in Jupiter, sustains itself, not of its own will, not of its own volition or decision, but of the forces of the energy, churning upon that great world and within that great world. Okay, that was the principle of the pirate ride, and then comes maturity and the sub-principles of wisdom and fortitude. I talked about that a little earlier. Maturity is the remembrance of what has worked and what has failed in our lives. Maybe, if we're really lucky, we can even observe what's worked and failed in other lives, although that's a big trick. That's a harder thing to do. It's hard to teach wisdom. Wisdom is gained by experience typically. That's why we have to have those years of folly. Some of us, for longer than others. Next comes the social principle. We human beings need each other. We're social creatures. We do best with others. Then comes public speaking. Reminder to use few words, carefully chosen words, deliberate words, and to never ever gossip. And then temperance, and the sub-principles of wisdom and fortitude and apathy. Reminder to do everything and consume everything and engage with things in moderation, in considered moderation. That's what I failed to do yesterday. I failed to apply myself with moderation. The next principle is the horror show. Oh, and apathy. Apathy is the ability to see what's outside of our control. That's the sub-principle of temperance. And to not let it have an undue impact on us, because it's outside of our control. Then comes the horror show, as I said, which is the fact that terrible, absolutely horrible, I mean, just astonishingly terrifying things are happening around us. To our friends and our families and strangers and our pets and the animals in the wild and to us. And if they're not happening right now, if we've got some moments or some years of bliss, rest assured the horror is coming. Even if we get off really well all the way till the time of our death. It might be a brief horror, but it'll be a horror nonetheless. It might be as brief as my own dad's death, winking out with a heart attack, which is probably on a scale of things, this is probably the easiest way to go in many ways. Just fall down on the ground and pass out. And then the scale goes over. And the degrees of horror are, I will shudder to think. Anyway, I want to remember that. I want to keep in mind that I've got this little room here, and the shades are drawn, and interesting how I do that more often. The guy that used to go out into the wild now stays home with the shades drawn. Again, I'm reminded that Emerson, above my left shoulder here, used to admonish that the wise man stays at home. I can't quite speak to that one so much yet, but I'm getting it more and more. At least if I'm getting the sympathy, the sense, if not the meaning of that. Again, with that which must be borne is the horror show, our responsibilities and our pain. What pain, you ask? Well, the pain comes in all kinds of sorts, right? For example, one type is work is really hard for me. It's a pain. It's literally something that I suffer with. I don't enjoy work. I'm one of the average humans that has found themselves into a job that's difficult, stressful. And I've got a good job. I've got an easy job, comparatively speaking. I mean, I give my all, but I am very fortunate. There are people out there with awful jobs. Still, I struggle. And I bear it. And I do it. And I try to keep an optimistic spirit and upbeat. If you were my coworker, you probably wouldn't gain that sense that I'm inside wishing I wasn't doing that. Because I think I do a pretty good job of keeping a stiff upper lip, as they say. Okay, next is, what is it called? The Feast of Offal. Let me explain that name. I came up with that title for a reason. Offal is the waste and byproduct of the butcher's art, right? So they're cutting up, cut them up an animal and making it into, cuts of meat that they can sell. And then there's bits and pieces that they can't put out on the shelf to sell. They'll have to use some other waste. Usually it's the waste and byproduct, the skin and the hair and the toenails and the bones and whatever, right? Offal, right? The waste and byproduct of the butcher's art. In some ways, you can use some of that stuff. You can grind it up into sausage and put it in an intestinal skin and tie it both ends and kind of hide the offal that way. Some of it you just have to throw out. And for the most part, though, if we knew what it was, we probably wouldn't want to necessarily eat it, right? That's why it's a feast of offal. It's when we find ourselves eating the residue and the seconds and the byproduct of not just the butcher's art in this case, but of life. So when we get upset and we rail at the world and we take it out and we share it with our loved ones and our family and our spouse and our companion and even our pets. And we're, gosh darn the gosh dang, what happens? It can happen. You kind of let it go, right? In the safety of home. We don't do that with our coworkers very often, or strangers, but we will do it at home. That's the feast part, where we're taking not the bits and pieces of an animal's carcass, but the bits and pieces that are the excess, the waste, the gross stuff of what's going on in our head. And we spew it out into the world through our mouth and through our gestures and our facial expressions, maybe even through writing. And it's a feast because others consume it up. They can't help it sometimes, right? If I'm raging and having a tantrum in front of my family, which I once did, thankfully I can say decades ago. It's been a long time since I was that guy. But I used to do that. They had no choice but to consume it, to slop it up. My wife in particular, because she's an attentive, caring, good woman. And she would listen to me rage, and it would hurt her. And I never hurt her. I never, touched her or anything. I'd never abused her, and I never called her names or said anything about her. I raged against the world back then. I was upset at life. And I wanted to let it out. And I let it out, and my wife consumed it. And to a small degree, my daughter had seen that as well. Fortunately, she was very small, and I finally got control of that and stopped doing that kind of thing. Stopped. Was it a performance? Performing the Feast of Offal. So I got a handle on that, and then I recognized what it was, and I came up with a name for it, namely the Feast of Offal. But there's a second side of it as well. There's the consumption of the feast, the side where others are doing this, and we're soaking it up, because in some ways it's kind of a voyeuristic thing, better them than us, right? So someone's suffering, they're having a tantrum, they're having a tough time, right? We kind of put on a face that we kind of feel for them, but at the same time it's like, wow, so I'm not the only one that suffers, right? You kind of make some popcorn and eat it up and take in the feast. Well, watching others have a road rage, for example, is an example of that. Oh, look at that. It's very interesting. That person's really being aggressive. But in a way, we're kind of soaking it up. We're taking it in. And it's like taking in, poison in a way. Excuse me. Just like when you eat, sausage, you don't actually know exactly sometimes everything that you're taking into your body. It may, whether it's good or bad for you. Likewise, when you consume the feast of someone else's feast of offal that they're giving out, you may be soiling yourself. You may, if anything, just for the voyeuristic nature of it, right? So I try not to do that as well. So this principle is an admonition to neither perform the feast nor consume the feast when it is presented before me. Feast of Offal can also be quite a distraction, and it's also a way of relieving energy and upset in an unhealthy way. And I would rather not be distracted, and I would rather release those energies and upsets, manage those things in a more healthy and mature way. Next is two principles that go together: distraction and agency in the great indifference. Distraction is where we keep ourselves busy all through life with our work and our play and our gossip and our family and our hobbies and our sports and our religions and beliefs and all that stuff. We can do a good job of staying busy all our life so that we don't have to witness the fact that it seems that we're all alone in the universe. It seems that there are no gods, no one looking after us. We have to attend to ourselves. And when we're dead, that's the end. A lot of us don't want to see that, so we keep ourselves otherwise occupied. Next comes the best seat in the house, to not want to be anyone else, be anywhere else, or be doing anything else, but to be okay with who I am, where I am, and what I'm doing right now. And then the Path of Wildness. It's a way to move forward, to break out of our current circumstance of life, to move into a new life. You do that by collecting facts, well, kind of having a rough idea about an option, collecting facts to inform us about that option. And maybe there's more than one option. For facts, maybe it's to stay or to go. I've had that decision many times. Collect the facts, weigh the facts, consider the facts, give ourselves more time, and maybe a little more time, but not forever, because you can think your way, to the end of your life. You can consider your way to the end of your life. Eventually we reach a point, okay, now I'm going to make a choice. If we still don't have enough empirical evidence one way or another, we can choose to just go with our gut, or pile our gut on top of our evidence and make a choice. And then off we go. It's a great life adventure. Even if we fail, we gain something. That's the beautiful thing about the Path of Wildness, is that it's almost impossible to fail once upon the path. Because treading the path is its own reward. I like that. No, I'll keep the letter. Next is the risk of avoiding risk, the deep level risk of life, of not spending time to find ourselves and to create our own story and to have a great life adventure. And then the surface level risk of life, which is education, career, home, family, and security. We can attend to those throughout our adult life, but if we don't attend to the deep one, we might find ourselves at my age on the cusp of 60 thinking that we missed something. And if we think that, we probably did. We can try to gain it back, but results vary at this point. It's tough to do. It doesn't mean it's not a worthwhile effort. We can distract ourselves to the end of our days with seeming adventures. It's different, though. It doesn't make a structural, deep change, because it's the change that comes of a great life adventure, attending to that deep risk at an early age, that changes almost changes the character of who we are and the everything about us. It's too late to do that. It's too late to do it too late in the game, because it molds and forms, and it's like I'm going to regret saying this, it's like a good cancer in a way, right? If we have that great life adventure at an early age, we have something that changes inside of us. Something expresses inside of us, and then it grows and fills and becomes part of us throughout the next 30 years. And then when we get to old age, it has, and again, I apologize for the awful metaphor, it has metastasized. This great life adventure, this experience of our youth, has metastasized into an irrevocable phenomenon within us. And we are that thing, if not fully, at least fully enveloped of it. It is part and parcel of who we are. We'll find ourselves in a situation where we have less need of patriotism and religion and nationalism or deep hobbies, or the deep love and commitment of family, all of which are fine things when taken in moderation. The problem is when we have nothing else, when we have nothing else to call our own, we may latch onto those things with a fervor that goes beyond, a mature attention. It becomes an obsession. Our identity becomes a contrived costume that we wear, ready-made, on offer, that first touched in midlife becomes a banner in the old age, something with a flag we wave around, a song that we sing. I guess that's fine. Although still it seems like it's not our own. That's the risk of avoiding risk. That's the risk of avoiding the deep risk, of attending to the deep level risk of life. The next is sin and damnation. There are 7 sins in my worldview. These 7 refer to the sin of believing on things that are untrue, of being untrue ourselves, and of gossip, again with the gossip. The 7 are falsity, credulity, faith, superstition, dogma, authority, and gossip. Doing any of these 7 sins results in a kind of a damnation in the here and now, where it's a funny thing, you can be in hell and not know it. You can be damned, because you can believe things that are untrue, but you have such a strong allegiance to them, and they become part of our identity that you don't really realize that you're damned, but you're damned in an objective sense of possibly believing and enacting a life founded upon untruths. Being untrue, being a liar, is self-evidently damnable. And then gossip, talking about others behind their back. It doesn't mean just talking about others behind their back. It means doing so in such a way that you'd be ashamed if they saw you doing it. If you turned around, you're gossiping about someone, you turned around, oh, they're right there, right? If I'm just telling someone some mundane thing about, oh, I'm gonna see Ralph in the afternoon. He's got a new Corvette. Oh, hey, Ralph. No big deal with that. I will see Ralph in the afternoon. He's got a new Corvette, and did you know that he's mortgaged himself to the hilt? He's broke. He hasn't got any money yet. He bought a Corvette. What's he thinking? Oh, there he is. He's right there. You get this. You see the difference, right? So it's a damnable thing. Next is complete oblivion, the prospect that without a soul, and if there is no gods, there are no gods, there is no God, then once we're dead, that seems to be the end of us. We won't see our loved ones again. We won't reunite. We won't have a chance to reconcile any differences, and we won't see justice served. So best to live the best we can now before the end, and not cling to the hope of another world that there's absolutely no reason to believe it exists. I know it's tempting to think that, because then we can dismiss, we can be not of this world, right? And we can just kind of bide our time here, abiding our existence, tolerating this time, not all the while realizing that this is the only sand through any hourglass we'll ever see. Complete oblivion, that is. Next is the great life adventure. I kind of talked about this a little bit. It's that thing we do preferably in our early life. The sweet spot, like I like to say, is between 25 and 30, after university and before the career starts. That's the sweet spot. Give yourself anything. Do what you want to do. And if you're really, really lucky, it'll beat the crap out of you. You're really blessed if you get your crap beat. If life beats the crap out of you between 25 and 30. Have some fun too, but you'll come back with a limp. and maybe a scar. And if you're really have interest in thinking something heavy, recognize that even if you die, even if you don't make it to 30 in the course of your great life adventure, I mean, not throwing your life away, but in the course of a great life adventure, what a blessing that is too. Curious way. Okay, now the season of philosophy, a time to record what we've learned along the way, and then the bullseye aim, striving for the mark but missing, the uphill climb, not giving up or settling in life and digging a hobbit hole in the side of the mountain, but to steadily climb up, up, up the mountain, stopping to enjoy the view, recognizing the cold nights to come, keeping lean and fit along the way, and ready to leave our corpse at the side of the mountain one day, far from others. Next is arena and utility. Life is an arena for the use of our principles in the pursuit of our objectives. Remembering them daily as I do keeps them ready in my head. It's funny, last night I had it ready in my head. I had Temperance ready in my head, but I chose to, I said, shut up, leave me alone. I did the thing. I indulged. I failed. But now I'll be stronger. I'll remember. Next is nothing is enough. A reminder to try to get by with less. And then finally, the principle of fun, or a suggestion that I should enjoy the here and now while looking forward to the pleasures to come, the life to come, and then having good memories of the past. You know, this is on top of, in some ways, in spite of the horror show, right? Because the horror is going to be there nonetheless. But enjoying life, having fun, having a good life in that regard, a pleasurable life is, as long as it's a virtuous life, is maybe the best we can do. Okay, that's my good life creed. Now let's plan for the coming day. I've got only a handful of meetings again today, important meetings. I think I'm ready for them. I think I'm ready to move forward. I'm ready for this day. I feel good. I slept well. Coffee's kicking in. Dad fuel is firing the engines. I'll get up now, go over, I'll read my Bible. I think I'm on Isaiah 41 this morning. Then I'll go downstairs, I'll feed the dogs, feed myself, change into my work clothes, get ready for the day, do the day, make this day. Thanks for joining me. Be safe, but not too safe.